that person everyone calls easygoing? The one who never complains, who always says yes, who's so chill about everything? Yeah, that person isn't chill. They're terrified. If you're someone who prides yourself on being low maintenance, on never being difficult, on always keeping the peace, welcome. You're about to feel very called out. And today, we're breaking down the psychology of people-pleasing, the thing society calls kindness, but science calls something else entirely, a survival strategy. Here's the thing. When most people think about trauma responses, they know fight or flight. You either face the threat or you run from it. But psychologists actually recognize 4 trauma responses, not 2. Fight, flight, freeze, and the one nobody talks about, fawn. Fawning is when you survive danger not by fighting back or running away, but by making yourself useful, by becoming what the other person needs, by merging with their emotions so completely that you disappear. And here's the wild part. If you grew up in a home where someone's mood determined the entire atmosphere, where you had to read the room just to feel safe, fawning became your superpower. Your nervous system learned that the best way to survive wasn't to fight or flee, it was to please. Let me explain how this actually works in your brain. When you're a kid in an unpredictable environment, your nervous system is constantly scanning for danger. Psychologists call this neuroception. It's happening below your conscious awareness. And if the danger in your house wasn't a stranger or a fire, but a parent's anger, a sibling's jealousy, or just emotional chaos you couldn't control, your brain came up with a solution. Don't have needs, don't have opinions, don't take up space. Just tune in to what everyone else wants and give it to them before they even ask. That's fawning. And it doesn't look like trauma because it looks like gold star behavior, the perfect child, the helpful friend, the person who never causes problems. But underneath, you're not being kind, you're being strategic. You're managing everyone's emotions so yours stay safe. Now let's talk about what the other trauma responses actually look like, because fawning makes way more sense when you see it next to the others. Fight response is obvious. It's aggression, anger, confrontation. It's the person who yells back, who defends their boundaries loudly, who doesn't let anything slide. Flight is avoidance. It's the person who ghosts, who changes the subject, who physically or emotionally removes themselves when things get tense. Freeze is shutdown. It's dissociation. It's when your body is present, but you've mentally checked out because the threat is too big to fight or flee from. And then there's fawn. Fawn is the one that looks the most functional. It's over-apologizing. It's laughing at jokes that aren't funny. It's saying you're fine when you're not. It's agreeing with people you don't actually agree with. It's anticipating what someone needs before they ask and delivering it perfectly so they have no reason to be upset with you. Fawning isn't about being nice, it's about being safe. Here's something most people don't realize. If you're a chronic people pleaser, you're not just tired from being helpful. You're exhausted from a very specific thing. You're carrying everyone else's emotional state in your body. When someone's upset, you feel it as danger. When someone's disappointed, you feel it as failure. When someone's angry, even if it has nothing to do with you, you feel responsible for fixing it. That's not empathy. That's hypervigilance, and it's absolutely draining. Studies show that people who engage in chronic fawning behavior have higher rates of anxiety, depression, and something called complex PTSD. Because fawning doesn't just happen in the moment, it becomes your personality. You lose touch with what you actually want because you spent so long prioritizing what other people want. You don't even know what your preferences are anymore because you've been shape-shifting for so long. Let's be honest, society rewards fawning, especially in certain people. If you're someone who was taught that your value comes from being agreeable, from not making waves, from being the person who holds everything together, then fawning wasn't just a survival strategy, it was the only way to be loved. And that's the trap. Because now, even when you're safe, even when the volatile environment is gone, you're still fawning. Not because you have to, but because you don't know how to stop. If you've made it this far and you're thinking, wait, this is me, hit that subscribe button because we're about to go even deeper and you're going to want to hear this next part. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. We like to think people-pleasing is virtuous, selfless, kind. But let me tell you the truth that most therapists won't say out loud. People-pleasing is a control tactic. And I don't mean that to shame you. I mean it so you can see what's really happening. When you fawn, you're not actually being generous. You're trying to control how someone feels about you. You're trying to control their reaction. You're managing them so they don't hurt you. Think about it. When you say yes when you mean no, you're not doing them a favor. You're doing yourself a favor. You're avoiding the discomfort of their disappointment. When you over-apologize for things that aren't your fault, you're not being humble. You're trying to de-escalate a situation before it becomes a threat. When you laugh at a joke that makes you uncomfortable, you're not being polite. You're signaling, I'm not a problem. Don't hurt me. That's manipulation, not in a villainous way, but in a survival way. You learned that if you could just be perfect enough, agreeable enough, helpful enough, then people wouldn't leave you, wouldn't yell at you, wouldn't punish you. And maybe that was true when you were 7, but it's not true now. And the cost of still doing it is that you've made yourself invisible. Here's the thing psychologists know, but most people don't want to hear. Real kindness comes from choice. If you can't say no, your yes means nothing. If you're only nice because you're afraid of what happens when you're not, that's not generosity, that's compliance. And compliance isn't connection, it's self-erasure. And let's talk about the physical toll, because this isn't just emotional. When you're constantly in fawn mode, your nervous system never gets to rest. You're always scanning, always adjusting, always performing. Your body stays in a low-level stress state that psychologists call hyperarousal, and over time, that leads to burnout, chronic fatigue, autoimmune issues, and a whole list of stress-related health problems. Your body is paying the price for keeping the peace. Some people fawn because of childhood trauma. Others learned it in toxic relationships. Some developed it just from being in environments where being difficult meant being excluded. And for them, fawning isn't just a bad habit. It's the only way they know how to exist around other people. So it's important to ask yourself, am I people-pleasing because I genuinely want to help? Or am I doing it because not helping feels too dangerous? Because one is love, the other is fear, and you deserve to know the difference. But here's what gives me hope. If you learned to fawn, you can unlearn it, not overnight, but with awareness. The first step isn't to stop being kind, it's to start noticing when you're being kind out of fear instead of choice. Notice when you're about to say yes, but your body is screaming no. Notice when you're apologizing for existing. Notice when you're laughing at something that isn't funny just to make someone comfortable. That noticing is the beginning of change. And here's something wild. When you stop fawning, some people will call you difficult. They'll say you've changed, that you're not as fun anymore. And that's because they benefited from your self-erasure. But the people who actually love you, the ones who see you as a full human and not just a supporting character in their life, those people will respect your no. They'll handle your boundaries. They'll want to know the real you, not the performed version. So if you're someone who's been called easygoing your whole life, who prides yourself on never being the problem, who feels anxious at the thought of disappointing anyone, you're not broken. You're just operating from an outdated survival system, and it's time to update it. Not because being kind is bad, but because being kind at the cost of yourself isn't sustainable. And you deserve to exist as a full person, not a half person designed to keep everyone else comfortable. Your worth isn't determined by how little space you take up. It's not measured by how few needs you have, and it's definitely not proven by how much you can tolerate. You're allowed to have preferences. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to exist loudly. And the people who can't handle that were never safe for you anyway. If this video made you rethink your entire personality, do me a favor, leave a comment and tell me which part hit hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more psychology that actually explains why you are the way you are, subscribe to Simplify It, because Tom's breaking down the stuff most people are too afraid to say out loud. Thanks for watching. Now go practice saying no to something small today, just once, and notice how it feels. You've got this.